Imagine spending 10 years in school, studying for thousands of hours, taking hundreds of exams, and still never learning how to actually study. Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what happens to almost everyone. Most people think they're bad at studying. They blame their memory, their intelligence, or their lack of motivation. But here's the truth. You're not a bad learner. You've just been using the wrong method. And once you understand how your brain actually learns, studying becomes completely different. Think about the way you normally study. You open a textbook, you read a page, then you read it again, and maybe you highlight half of it. It feels productive. You feel like you're learning. But there's a problem. Familiarity isn't learning. Seeing the same information again and again doesn't mean your brain can actually remember it. Imagine watching someone ride a bicycle for an hour. Would that mean you could suddenly ride one? Of course not. Because watching isn't the same as doing, and studying works the same way. Your brain doesn't learn deeply just because you looked at something. It learns when you force yourself to remember it. This is where most students make their biggest mistake. They spend most of their study time looking at information. Instead, you should spend more time trying to retrieve it. Here's what that looks like. Read a section of your textbook. Then, close the book. Put your notes away. And ask yourself, what do I actually remember? Don't look at the answer. Don't cheat. Just try. Even if you remember only 20%, that's okay. Because the struggle to remember is actually helping your brain. Every time you pull information out of your memory, you're strengthening that memory. This technique is called active recall. And yes, it feels harder than rereading. That's the point. Real learning isn't always comfortable. Now there's another mistake students make. Cramming. You've probably done this before. It's the night before an exam. You suddenly realize you have an entire chapter to finish. So you stay awake for hours. One page, then another, then another. Eventually, you finish everything. And you think, I'm ready. But the next morning, you remember far less than you expected. Why? Because your brain doesn't work well with massive amounts of information crammed into a single session. Instead, give your brain time. Study something today. Review it tomorrow. Then review it again after a few days. And then, come back to it a week later. This is called spaced repetition. You're not forcing your brain to remember everything at once. You're giving it multiple opportunities to rebuild the memory. And every time you come back to that information, the memory becomes stronger. So, what does the correct way to study actually look like? It's surprisingly simple. First, learn the information. Read the concept carefully. Understand what it means. Don't rush. Then, close the book and test yourself. Ask questions. Try to explain the concept from memory. If you can't explain it, that's not failure. That's useful information. Because now, you know exactly what you don't understand. And that's where you focus. There's another powerful technique. Teach what you've learned. You don't even need another person. Sit at your desk and pretend you're teaching someone. Explain the concept out loud. Use simple words. Pretend you're explaining it to a 10-year-old. And pay attention to the moments when you get stuck. Those moments reveal the gaps in your understanding. Then go back, fill those gaps, and try again. Now imagine two students. Both have the same exam. The first student studies for 6 hours. He rereads his notes, highlights everything, and watches the same explanations again and again. The second student studies for 2 focused hours. He reads, closes the book, tests himself, explains the concepts, and reviews them over several days. Who do you think remembers more? Probably the second student. Because studying isn't a competition to see who can sit at a desk the longest. It's about how effectively you use your brain. And that's the lesson most of us were never taught. School teaches you what to learn: math, science, history, languages. But very rarely does anyone teach you how to learn. So if you've struggled with studying, don't immediately assume you're lazy. Don't assume you're unintelligent. And don't assume you have a bad memory. Maybe you were simply never taught the right method. Stop reading the same page over and over. Start testing yourself. Stop cramming everything into one night. Start reviewing over time. And don't just read information. Try to explain it. Because the goal isn't to study longer. The goal is to learn better. And once you understand how your brain actually learns, studying stops feeling like a punishment. It becomes a skill you can train. And the people who master that skill don't necessarily study the longest. They simply study the right way.